Hey, everybody, welcome to the second edition of The World According to Fox. This is a live stream tonight, and we have a very special guest this evening. And that guest is going to be a gentleman named Devery Anderson. Devery is a author. He is a very good friend of mine. And sorry if you couldn't hear me over that music. I don't know if that music was coming through or not. It's coming over my headphones, but I hope it wasn't coming to you. Um, He is an author. He is a very good friend of mine. I met him because of my interest in the Till case. Obviously, you know that for those of you that are interested, um, it is there's a new movie that's out. Um, I've seen it just partially, and I normally like to see a movie a couple, three times before I'll comment on it. But um, there's also another mini series that was out that we're going to talk about tonight called Women of the Movement that is based upon DeVry's book. And I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. I say DeVry, and I've been saying it for years, but I believe his name is Devery, not DeVry. So if I screw that up, he'll probably correct me. Um, he is the marketing manager for Signature Books in Salt Lake City. As you're going to see when he comes on tonight, you're going to see a whole plethora of books behind him. So I know he's a book rat. Uh, he began researching the murder of Emmett Till after he wrote a series of books on the Latter-day Saints and the Mormon Journal of Thought. He has a profound interest in that community, and he's written a number of them that are in the description below. So if you're interested in that, those are all down there, as well as the link to his Emmett Till book. I don't have the link to his new book, but it is coming out April 17th, 2023. The title of it is called A Slow, Calculated Lynching, and it's the story of a gentleman named Clyde Kennard. Honestly, I can tell you, I don't know the story, but I'm sure that if you have questions about it, Mr. Anderson's going to be able to answer them for you. But I know he's also passionate about that, and that's coming out, like I said, April 17th, 2023. So I became friends with him because I reached out to him, I think, on Facebook and was able to talk with him. And then we just got to know each other very, very well. And then I just was waiting for his book to come out. So I'm going to bring him on in just a second. So if you have questions, now's the time to put them in the chat. If otherwise, I'm just going to bring him on and he's going to come on right here. Mr. Anderson, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great. Was there anything about that you wanted to add, or did I get anything wrong in that introduction?
Just that the I didn't do the books before I had an interest in Emmett Till. Those other books, I'd developed the interest in Emmett Till back in 1994, and then uh, over I think a decade later, I started working on the Mormon history stuff, and then I was working on the Emmett Till book throughout that whole process. Because the Till book took me a long time to write, and these other ones didn't take so long. So I was working on everything at the same time, pretty much. So.
Well, the Tilto book took you a long time to reach because it's that thick. Um, and I was hoping it was like when I saw the thickness of it, because I assigned it to my classes. I had a number of different classes up at Long Beach State and Cal State Fullerton that I would assign my students to, and they were it just how come I've never heard of this before? Some of them have heard about it, others of them haven't. So we do have a question from a young person named Jamie. Uh, and the question is, it says, first of all, it says, thank you for writing the book. I really enjoyed it. I can't believe I didn't know about this before. And then they ask, what got you so interested in the Till case?
Well, first of all, thanks for reading the book. I appreciate that. Um, when I learned about the case, it was just quite by accident as I was watching a video that I checked out of the local public library called Eyes on the Prize, which had dedicated a 15-minute segment in episode 1 about the Till case. And the moment I saw that and just the tragedy of the whole thing just had such an effect on me that it wouldn't let me go. And so I was literally just grabbed by this case, and I wasn't let go until I did the book. It took a long time to start working on it, but I had 10 years of preparation really by getting to know Emmett's mother, I interviewed her for a class project when I was a student at the University of Utah. Once I interviewed her, I learned about the case in '94. I interviewed her 2 years later. And once I interviewed her, we became friends, and this case became very personal to me at that point. It was no longer just a historical event, it was a very personal case because I knew his mother and was in regular communication with her. And then she died in 2003, and it was a year later when the federal government opened the case to investigate it is when I decided I was really going to do the book. So from 94 to 2004, it was my time of just preparing myself, learning what I could.
Oh, I think we've lost him. I'll tell you this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show a short video. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm not sure. A telephone call came in and then that happened. And so hopefully that won't happen.
The beauty of the phones.
Yeah.
That's okay.
A spam call too, so I can't have things like that ruining.
Well, I'm sure everybody that's watching this knows exactly what a spam call is. I just have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you updated your car insurance lately? That's probably what the spam call was about. Your car insurance or your car warranty or something like that.
Yeah,
so
forgiveness is a big one too.
So from 94 to 2004, it was just an interest. You hadn't really said you were going to write this?
It was kind of in the back of my mind, and I just didn't think I really had it in me to do it or had the ability. But it wouldn't let me go during that time. And I thought I was kind of inching towards that, but I wasn't quite sure. I remember I posed the question to Emmett's mother once, how she felt about if I wrote a book. And she said, well, he's in the public domain. You have every right to. She said, but you might be writing mine with me. And when she told me that, it floored me. But it didn't happen. And she ended up dying anyway before her book even came out. It was published posthumously, but that ended up not happening. But she would suggest it just blew me away. But then I did from 2004 to 2014, I worked on my own. So it took me 10 years of directly, constantly researching and writing. And then the book came out in 2015.
My friend, that's called The Labor of Love. So I will tell you, you and I had talked about this before. For those people that are not familiar entirely with Emmett's story, I'm going to play a short video, and I'm going to play about 6 minutes of it, and then we'll talk on the other side. Okay?
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Then for him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
Emmett Till, 14, was kidnapped and killed allegedly for wolf whistling at the wife of accused Roy Bryant.
It's not just that they discover his body and that he's been killed. He has been brutally, brutally beaten. As a criminal defense attorney, when we look at crimes, we often try to put together a picture about what happened, and it takes a lot of hatred and a lot of rage to do the kind of violence that was done to Emmett Till. Being a black boy in the American South could be quite perilous. The allegation that Emmett Till was being social with a white woman was considered an affront, a threat to the racial order. And I think the shock of his death was compounded by the brutality of his death. Emmett's mother couldn't actually conform to the conventions of the time, and she did something really quite remarkable. She made the really unorthodox choice of having a funeral with an open casket that was going to be very widely publicized, that was going to be attended by the national press. She wanted civil rights leaders and political leaders to see what they did to her child. She she invited David Jackson and Jet magazine to take pictures of this child's battered body. And these images were widely circulated. Jet magazine was a publication that was primarily produced and distributed to the African American community that had been trying to educate the rest of the country about the horrors of segregation and racial violence and lynching in the American South. And the images were really, really challenging. It was the kind of visual that you didn't typically see. You certainly didn't see it outside of a war zone, and you certainly didn't see it with children. His face was grotesque. You could see eyes, but you couldn't really distinguish all of his facial features. That's how much violence he had been subjected to. Emmett's mother's presence in the photo is really important because she's really giving witness to victimization and violence. The other images that Emmett's mother provided just created this notion of a very respectable young boy who was trying to make the very best impression on everyone he met. The juxtaposition of a little boy in a suit and a tie with his battered face was a stark image that made it really impossible for anyone who saw it to be silent about it. Mainstream publications like Look and Life began talking about this issue. It became an issue that elected officials were being questioned about. These images made it impossible for white families in other parts of the country to stay indifferent, to stay neutral.
Never has this quiet little cotton-growing community of Mississippi seen so much publicity and so much excitement as in the past few days. Nearly 200 of the town's 500 or 600 residents have packed into the courthouse to hear the day's proceedings.
Do you have any evidence bearing on this case?
I do know that this is my son
How long do you expect to be here?
until the trial is over.
Bryant and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, were acquitted by this jury. And subsequently, even though they admitted taking the boy from the house, they were freed of kidnap charges.
The inability to hold anyone accountable for his murder and the comfort with which the men who killed him were able to talk about the violence was just adding to the injury. They weren't just killing a boy. They're expressing something rooted in this decades of animosity and fear and anger.
A boy, a 14-year-old boy, was killed brutally. And one of our objectives here is to see to it that that boy whose picture you see there does not die an inconspicuous death, and that his case will be remembered and something will be done about it.
These images became powerful forces in organizing a new level of commitment and resistance. The brutal murder of Emmett Till really pushed Rosa Parks to a deeper level of activism. That was one of the motivating forces behind her choice to not give up her seat on that bus. And in many ways, it was an organizing and galvanizing moment.
So, I have to pause just a moment because every single time, it doesn't matter how well I know the story or the different times we've talked about it, when I see that, as a parent, it blows my mind. The strength that Mamie Till had to have in order to do that is just unfathomable, because I know that if it was, especially since this was her only child, she didn't have any other children, did she?
No.
So I would have wanted to have crawled inside of a rock and wasted away. But a lot of people don't realize that that was the impetus for Rosa Parks to be able to not give up her seat. And we're going to go over a little bit the history of things as far as the some legal cases that maybe spurred on, like they didn't need any help, Milam and Bryant, to do what they did. But and as a lawyer, or at least a retired lawyer, I look at that and I go, I can't believe they let the kids in there and the wife is sitting there and all of that. So we have one quick question for you. This comes from a gentleman. It says that love the book. What's the most surprising thing you learned writing it?
Surprising thing, I suppose. Some of the information that came out that I learned about the FBI investigation, because I had so many questions myself, as far as whatever happened to the trial transcript, the murder weapon, and they found the trial transcript and they found the actual murder weapon that was used to shoot Emmett Till. But the autopsy, when they exhumed his body in 2005, and because during the original trial, the defense made the argument that the body was not Emmett Till's because it wasn't recognizable. And in case this went to trial again, they wanted to, use DNA evidence to prove it so that wouldn't be an issue this time around, wouldn't be an argument at all. And so they exhumed the body, and they did an autopsy, they did DNA tests, proved it was him, and they also did x-rays and other tests, and it showed that many more of bones in his body were actually broken. Most people testified in 1955 that it was his head that suffered all of the damage, and visibly that's true. They didn't notice much on the rest of the body, but they discovered that bones in his legs and his wrists and elsewhere were broken as well, so that it just adds to the tragedy. So I don't know if I'd characterize it as interesting, but just more to be hurt and angered about, that what he went through was much worse than we thought. We know he was pistol whipped, and it looks like maybe he was trying to protect his head, and they were beating on his wrists, beat his arms. Now, some of the damage probably came from the cotton gin fan that was tied around his neck, and when they threw him in the river, that 75-pound gin fan could have landed on his head and caused some of the damage after he was dead. But there's no question he was beaten mercilessly while he was alive and had to endure stuff that I just can't even imagine. We know more about that now than we did, so it adds to the tragic nature of the whole thing.
Yeah, oh boy, I can't even imagine that. But that leads me to something very interesting. I'm going to bring up some excerpts from your book that I'm going to talk to you about, and maybe you can expand upon.
Okay.
So the one thing that really stood out to me when I was reading your book, because I'm trying to write something myself, and the way that you were able to explain things at certain times, and I felt like I was there. You said that in 2004 they exhumed Emmett. Now, he was buried at Burr Oak Cemetery, correct?
Right.
Right, and they exhumed his body. But when they put him back, they didn't put him back in the original casket.
Right.
So when I read through your book, you said, suddenly I became one of those who touched that same lid. This is after you had gone to the manager of Burr Oak and said, oh, okay, this is where he was at, and the whole bit. And they informed you that they had the old casket, correct?
Right. I knew it was there, but I went in and asked if I could see it.
And they let you in.
They did, and they were hesitant because there was literally a blizzard going on outside, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Maybe it's common in Chicago, but
yeah.
Lake
effect snow has that effect.
They looked at me like, in fact, she even said, there's a blizzard going on out there. I hate to send anybody out to the shed in this weather. And I just said, I'm not from here, and I would really love to see this casket. And so they took me out to this shed and took it down from this shelf it was on.
Wow.
It was covered in cans.
Oh, I lost you again. You got probably another spam call coming in. But so this is there you are. You're back. Another spam
another
call.
spam.
Yeah, that's okay. That's life. Look, this isn't NBC. Well, that's amazing to me, because when I read it, as you said, suddenly I became one of those who had touched the same lid, placed my hand on that same glass, and looked inside. And then you go on to say, although the casket was empty now, I leaned over and imagined you were staring at the beaten and bloated body of Emmett. And I just, wow. Just wow.
And the reason it was significant, you see that footage of all these thousands and thousands of people filing past the casket. His body was covered with a clear glass so that people couldn't touch him, or maybe just the smell of the body maybe had a twofold purpose. But so I touched that same glass, and when the FBI exhumed the casket, they said they found thousands of fingerprints that were as fresh as they were the day, from 50 some years earlier. And so mine were suddenly added to all of that. And this was happening originally in 1955. People filed by that casket at the same time the grand jury was deciding whether the men who killed Emmett Till should be indicted. When I did it in February of 2007, the grand jury was forming once again to see if there was anybody to indict. So the timing of the whole thing, while the case was open again, for me was just surreal.
Absolutely incredible. Because it's funny, because you go on to say about how the glass itself had gotten much darker because it had obviously been underground for 50 years. But then you go on to say, I saw something that thousands before you had not, your reflection.
Right.
And that's just mind-boggling to me. Just I actually felt myself there doing that and was just dumbfounded. So I just want you to know that was quite impactful for me.
And that casket now at the Smithsonian, you can still see the casket. I saw it before it was restored. It's since been restored to look like new, but it's in the Emmett Till room at this African American Museum of History and Culture.
Oh, and your book's there too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I love that. It was stunning to me. I've watched the different documentaries and the PBS documentaries, and saw the fact that after they said, "How do you feel about this, Mr. Bryant and Mr. Milam?" and then they go on to deeply kiss their wives like they're at some drive-in in the back seat. But I'm putting up two quotes here. One's from 1985 and one's from 92, because a lot of people have probably asked you what happened to Bryant, what happened to Milam. And they obviously, we know that during the time of the trial, everybody sort of, or almost everybody, came to their aid, and there was some money that they were collecting, and all of that. But then after that, they were sort of they were pretty much ostracized, correct?
Yes. After they sold the story and it was published in Look magazine, billed as their confession, and they got paid to tell what happened. This is after they were acquitted, so they couldn't be tried again. People defended them prior to the trial and up to and through the trial, because people were more worried about what the effect of an acquittal would have on their way of life, that it would be the final blow for segregation. The Supreme Court had just decided about the Brown decision a year and a few months earlier. That got them riled up. And then the Till case happened, and suddenly the nation was watching Mississippi. And so to them, it was more important that they be acquitted of this murder charge rather than have a further domino effect regarding segregation. But once it came out of their own mouths that they did it, and kind of bragged about it. People, that was just a bit too far. They were fine defending them. Just don't talk about it. We know you did it, but don't talk about it. We'll forget about it. This made it hard for them to forget about it, and it made them confront the fact that they had let murderers go free. And so they were ostracized and left the state.
So when you're talking about the Look magazine, I just put that up on the screen. This is the Look magazine that came out so Emmett was killed in late August of 1955, and the trial happened literally within a month that they were tried and acquitted and done and over with. And of course, in today's standards, that simply just doesn't happen that fast. But then in January of 1956 is when this Look magazine came out, and they pretty much said, because they got what, $4,000 for the story or something.
It's close to it. Their signed releases say it was 3,150.
See, that's the kind of stuff that only you're going to know. But so they pretty much admitted it and said, look, we're not going to let these people come back and tell us how we're going to live our lives and blah, 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 blah. So I was stunned, and I was so stunned that in the spirit of full disclosure, I was able to find this Look magazine because I was looking for it. I found the Jet magazine, the original one that they published this picture in, and then I found this Look magazine, and I was able to give those to you because this is much more important to you than it is to me. So I just want you to know, I just don't want people to go, wow, where did he get all this stuff? Right? Trust me, it wasn't easy, and it took a lot of eBay hunting. But I'm going to go back to the quotes. You're going to see my little image here come up here just real quick. I'm going to go back to the quotes of Mr. Bryant here in just a minute. So in 1990, I got to move him over a little bit. In 1990 or 1985, he came out and said, he's been dead 30 years, and I can't see why it can't stay dead. And then in 92, Emmett Till is dead and gone. Why can't people leave the dead alone and quit trying to stir things up? Now, I have to tell you, when I see these kind of things and those comments, I literally want to transport myself back there and just knock the living snot out of him.
Yeah, get in line.
You know, and I know that people, but you know, the interesting thing about this is that I actually, being a lawyer, it's a matter of I look at it and I just go, I look at the chronology of it, and I see the Brown versus Board of Education case, and most people know that was the case that ended segregation, or was supposed to have ended segregation. And then they didn't provide, the Supreme Court didn't provide any remedy. And then they came back again, and the Supreme Court said, okay, we're going to remedy this. And that's when they came out with their statement of, yeah, fix it with all deliberate speed, which meant nothing. And it was after that decision, which was in the spring of 55, that gave rise to Milam and Bryant to just say, we're not going to put up with this stuff anymore. And it appears, at least, that Emmett was the person that caught the brunt of this.
Yeah, in fact, some people even talked about, and usually it takes some time and perspective after something like this for someone to be this insightful. But some people talked about, but they were insightful for the wrong reasons. They were insightful because they were against the Brown decision. But people said that, you know, it wasn't Milam and Bryant who killed Emmett Till, it was the Supreme Court. And even though they were blaming it, saying, you know, it was the Supreme Court's fault, like if they hadn't issued this decision, Emmett wouldn't have been killed. They recognized, at least, and now, of course, people recognize more with some more perspective, that it was segregation being in the news and whipping people up because they were right with the day Emmett Till went into the Bryant store and whistled at Carolyn Bryant. It was that day. It was the day before that the most staunchly segregationist person in the governor's race won the primary, which in Mississippi was the primary because no Republican ever ran in the primaries. Whoever won the primary won the governorship, and they were very conservative Democrats in the South at the time.
Wow.
That what race was won the day and announced in the papers the day that Emmett Till went into the store. So people were really whipped up about segregation right then. A lot of threats, the Supreme Court can't tell us what to do. All this stuff had been in the news for months, and each candidate tried to outdo the other. So the rhetoric was just, off the charts. And so Emmett Till enters Mississippi right at that moment. And so the timing couldn't have been worse for him. But people were whipped up to a frenzy about segregation. And so something that, got a man riled up, nothing worse than any kind of impropriety between a white man or a black man and a white woman, no matter how small. And it
Right.
didn't take anything, especially in that climate, for them to get whipped up and want to do something about it.
Well, we have a question from Brittany, and she writes, "Are you planning on writing additional books about other cases?"
Yes, the one I just finished, and it's finished, and it's at the publisher. It just was put on Amazon for pre-order the other day. It's the book about Clyde Kennard, who was also a Mississippian. It's different than the Emmett Till case, but tragic in its own way. In fact, very tragic. John Dittmer, who wrote the book Local People, which was about Mississippi civil rights, he called it the saddest story of the whole movement. And there is another book that came out a few years ago, a self-published one. Wasn't really based on the kind of research I did. I interviewed 60 people and did a lot of archival work. I was able to examine the papers of the NAACP, the Medgar and Murley Evers papers, even interviewed Clyde Kennard's doctor, who was his prison doctor back in 1962 at Parchman Prison. So I have I did tons of research for this book, and I believe it's going to be I believe it's a good book. If I can brag a little bit, I think I did a good job on it, and I'm anxious to see the response.
You can brag all you want, but I honest to goodness, even after I saw the Till book, I just was like, it reminded me of Roots: The Next Generation, in a sense, where Alex Haley's father, although he didn't really approve, he wanted Alex to be a doctor or a lawyer, didn't really approve of this journalist historian thing that he was doing, although I think it turned out pretty well for Alex Haley. He said, when Alex asked him, "How did you like my book on Malcolm X?" And of course, Simon Haley was not a Malcolm X fan. And he looked at his son and he said, "It must have taken a great deal of work to be able to do that." And that's exactly what I looked at your book and thought, because this isn't a 100-pager that you can blow through in a half a day. And there's a lot of it that's deep and personal writing. So I have to tell you, it's just absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
It's very strange when you think about the perfect storm that had to have happened dealing with the Brown case and Emmett going to Mississippi, and Mississippi being the center of the storm, for lack of a better term. But it's very strange that when Emmett was leaving the train station from Chicago, that Mamie said to him, "You didn't even kiss me goodbye." And then a bit of foreshadowing says, "How do you know I'll ever see you again?" That's just odd, that it all comes through like that. And I mean, I know that through your writings and everything that you have a certain idea as far as your faith is concerned. But my belief has always been there has to be an architect to all of this stuff, as far as life and human beings and all of that. And I believe that every person is put here for a purpose, and I just, you know, I think Emmett was put here for that purpose because he did ignite that storm. So we have one other question here from a Mr. Washington, and it says, "How do you choose the subjects of your books?"
I think the best way to answer that is they choose me. um, when I learned about Emmett, it just grabbed me and wouldn't let me go, and I knew I had to do something. First, it was just a little simple website in 1996 when the internet was just coming around, and a website back then would have been very cheap and looked very amateurish, and that's what I did. And I was telling everybody about it to the point where people were getting tired of me, like always bringing up this case. But then I wrote the book, and I wanted to have a similar experience after that book was done and it came out, and I was kind of exhausted for a while. I thought I need to do, writing's in my blood, and I wanted to do something else, but I wanted something to really grab me again, and nothing was really grabbing me to that extent. But one day when I was reading this book, local people, and I saw a couple of page summary that John Dittmer put in the book. He's the one who called it the saddest story of the movement. When I saw the 2 pages or so that he wrote in there, it grabbed me in the same way. In fact, I write in a journal every day. This was June 13th, 2017, and I wrote in my journal that night. Today, I've decided the next book, what it's going to be. I feel the same passion and excitement to tell this story as I did the Emmett Till case. And I wrote in my journal, so when that book comes out, I can go back to this day, June 13th, 2017, and say, this is when it all started. And I worked hard on the book for 4 years. It only took me 4 years this time instead of 10. I learned how to be a little bit more efficient. Smaller book, too. But yeah, it grabbed me in the same way. And I interviewed so many people. I interviewed the Haley Barbour, the former governor of Mississippi, tracked down Emmett Till's doctor, or Clyde Kennard's doctor, who is in his mid 80s now, and he examined him in prison and talked to him. I talked to Charles Pickering, who was a federal judge that George W. Bush chose in 2002. He got involved later on to posthumously exonerate Clyde Kennard. I can give a summary of his story, or people can just read it if they want. But yeah, everybody who I tried to track down, I found, and they were all willing to let me interview them. And so it was the research process this time was just smooth, and it was pretty much flawless. And I learned how to lot of stuff was available digitally now online that wasn't available during the Till research, and so it went much smoother as a result of just advances in
Thank God for technology, huh?
Yeah, and so it was flawless, and took 4 years. And now this last year I've been doing some editing, and did the index while I was in England last month, and it's now with the publisher, and I'll see it in a few months, and I'm excited.
Me too. I can't wait. And so just so people know that your Till book is available on Amazon, you can get it one on Audible. So if you're not a big reader, but you travel in your car a lot, you can get it there. It's available on Kindle. It's available in paperback and in hardback, correct?
Yeah, the hardback is out of print, but the paperback has a new introduction. Talks a little bit about the miniseries I was involved with, and that's the one that's currently in print. But if you're a purist and and a collector, you can still find a hardback online, probably. So.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because we had spoken somewhat about the fact that maybe it was going to become a movie based upon, there was going to be a movie based upon your book, or there was going to be something that was going to be that was going to come of that. And then it happened, then it didn't happen, and then it happened again. And it became this series called Women of the Movement, which went on ABC. And originally it was on Hulu, but I understand it's not on Hulu any longer. But if you are still interested and want to watch it, there is, you can get it on abc.com, I believe. And I think it's on Vudu. All you have to do is search for it, Women of the Movement, and you'll find it. Apple
Amazon.
TV?
Yeah, and Amazon Prime.
Oh, there
I
you
think
go.
it's about 13 for the whole series, which I purchased it on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it aired on ABC in January. It's 6 episodes. They showed two a night on ABC, but on Hulu it was 6 episodes, and
That's amazing, though. I mean, that it actually came to fruition like that and such, and that it was really quite captivating. It was one of those things that I just was like, I cannot believe that I'm watching through this and everything, and that that it is it's so it was so impactful that when I was watching it, I felt like I don't know that I was that you were I know you were the author of the book and everything, but I was looking at every little thing, and I know that they did certain things, um, like when Willie Mae actually told Mamie Till that, that, DeVries lost his connection, so I'm gonna talk to you here for a minute. Um, he'll be back on in a moment. Uh, in the movie, in both the movies, in both the miniseries, The Women of the Movement, as well as in the new movie Till that came out, they've got a woman that comes into the house that tells Mamie Till that they found Emmett's body. Um, that didn't happen. It was a phone call that she got from Mississippi that indicated that they found him, that they came or that they came and got him that night. She had not yet found known that he was gone. They were still holding out hope. Um, Devery's book goes into the relationship between Mamie Till and the NAACP and a number of different things as far as how the Till story got out there and became so national and international. The rest of the world was kind of looking when it was found out. Of course, remember this is 1955, so a lot of this was radio, and that the international community actually um, got got there too. So um, yeah, we lost you there just for a second. I went and was talking to them about just the one instance, both in the miniseries as well as in the movie, where that it was a phone call that she got that said that they came and got Bo, that it wasn't actually somebody walking in the door, but that was just dramatic license that they had to deal with. Um, we have one other question that I had for you was when when you decide that you're going to write on a subject, is it something that like I think you commented on it a little bit. It's something that really has to grip you, right?
oh yes,
Because it is a labor of love.
yes, it's a long process. And to do it right, you have to be dedicated to telling the story, and you have to be so dedicated that you can sniff out and weed out the errors. You don't just uh, hear something from somebody without vetting it. And like people's memories are terrible, and
Yeah.
someone gives, a memory of an event. I check to see what they said originally, weigh it against that, find as many statements as I can over the years to see if the story evolved in their minds. And you're not going to spend all that time doing that if you're not dedicated. You'll just do a superficial uh, amount of research that will get you by and get you something on paper or on the computer. If you're not dedicated to doing it right.
That was one thing I really appreciated about this because and it really stood out to me because you initially set your reader up and say, "Hey, guess what? I know what people said before. I've interviewed people and I know what they say now." And it's almost like being a parent. You've got one child saying this happened, you've got another child saying that happened, and you know it's somewhere in the middle. Um, and I like the fact that you were able to say, I've weighed all of this, and lo and behold, this is the conclusion that I have reached based upon the facts that I have seen. And I want you to know I really truly appreciated that. I had you down into my class. Was it Long Beach? Yeah, it was Long Beach. And then you came down and you spoke to my class. And I will tell you, still to this day, because that was probably a good 6-7 years ago, right?
It was in December of 2016.
How do you remember that?
Because I was also in town for a Christmas party. And remember, I had to
Okay.
rush back to
Okay.
LA.
Okay. All right. Because I was like, whatever. Like, oh, it's December and here's the date. Whatever. Okay. That's why you're a historian. But I had so many students. In fact, one student even brought her parents in. Do you remember that?
I don't think I remember that.
Yeah, there was a one of my students. She was an older student, meaning older to me was because everybody else was 19 and 20, but she was probably in her late 20s, early 30s. Um, but she brought her parents in because she told her parents about the story and they had never heard of it and they wanted to hear you speak. But so many of my students had said to me, I really appreciated it. And I loved that. And I know that they came up and talked to you for several minutes after your presentation and the like. So that was an amazing thing. Um, so here's my question for you. I know you're a man of faith, and I know you believe that this world is not the only. I know you believe. I think you believe in an afterlife. Do you think, like most of us, when we're dealing with our own mortality, which has happened sooner than I wanted it to, um, we think about if there's an afterlife, are my parents going to meet me? I've got two brothers that have passed, and I think about that, right? Do you think Emmett's going to be there for you?
Uh, I would I would like to think so. I can't imagine. I would think that he has better things to do than hang out with me. But um, if he learns about it and knows I wrote a book,
Oh, he
he might
knows.
seek.
He knows.
And just don't know how the process works. If you're up there and someone says, "Oh, so and so died," I imagine it's good news when you hear someone died. Then it's like so and so died today. It's like wonderful. I can here we don't do that, so it's got the whole things. I got to get it right, to know how the process even works. But I would love to think so because I have questions for him. If the historian in me wants to conduct an oral history, get all the stuff that he wasn't able to tell about what happened in the store, what happened the night of the kidnapping, and he's the only one who can tell that. So,
Yeah, I thought to myself, and I thought, well, wow, because my belief is he would have to know. You've got this labor of love, and you've put all of this work into this, and you have been instrumental in making sure that more people know what happened to this young man. That if he's not there, you can bet that Mamie's going to have him by the ear and bringing him over to you. So, um, and and if I get there before you, I'll make sure I remind him. Um,
all right, you do that.
so we'll be watching over, but
You know
it's
what?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one thing about filming the series that unless you were there, you really couldn't, talk about. But we filmed in Mississippi at the original sites, so the murder trial, if you saw Women of the Movement, which took up the majority of 3 episodes, that was filmed at the actual courtroom where the Emmett Till murder trial was held in Sumner, Mississippi. That courthouse, the town square, all of that, and to be in that room to see everybody sitting where they sat looking like they looked, cigarette smoke, which they just blew in steam and stuff like that, seeing Mose Wright stand in the same spot and point out the killers in court like he did. Me, I played a juror, so I was one of the bad guys, or at least my decision was a bad decision.
Yeah, I kept trying to convince you to vote not guilty, or to vote guilty, but
Yeah,
you
I
wouldn't
couldn't
vote
go off
the
script
script.
too, but I had to do too many retakes. But that was like seeing the dead come back. It was like the ghosts of the past were there. And I purposely wanted to be part of the trial for that reason, because I knew I'd have a guaranteed seat every day as a juror. And I wanted to see that trial reenacted. I wanted to see the black press sitting where they sat, the killer sitting where they sat, hear that testimony given, and they kept pretty good to the original testimony from the trial. It was like going back in time, or the dead voices from the dust coming alive and speaking. That was the most surreal, amazing experience of my life, to be part of that. And to have invested years as I did thinking about the kidnapping, the store incident, the trial, seeing them all come to life was just it's something I'll never forget. And I'm glad I keep a daily journal, because I wrote about each day of being on set, and it was just very, very yeah, it rates up with the top 2 or 3 experiences of my life.
If you remember on Facebook, you were posting pictures that you had taken with the cast, and you took pictures of people that were playing in Milam and Bryant. And I said to you, "How dare you consort with the enemy?"
Yeah.
I was just like, no, no, no. And I know intellectually, I know that those aren't the real guys. But boy, let me tell you what, that just bugged my bumper a little bit. I was just like, no, you can't be doing that. So,
Well, I have a picture of Mamie Till and Carolyn Bryant laughing and joking, walking together to the set. And I thought, well, if they can be friends, I guess I can be friends with all of them too. So,
yeah, I'm not seeing that. I know that, in the afterlife, we're supposed to be forgiving and all that, but I think Mamie Till's going to have some issues with some people. But
yeah.
hey, I just wanted to thank you very much for coming on tonight. I cannot wait for the Clyde Kennard book. Again, that's coming out April 17th of 2023. It's available on Amazon right now for pre-order. I will look it up. I will put a link in the description of this live stream. I know I have the link to the Till book and your other books, but if I can find the pre-order, I will ensure to put that in. But thank you so much for taking your time out of your Friday night. Happy Veterans Day, all of that. I know people, and all of you who tuned in that asked questions, there were fabulous questions. And I look forward to whatever I'm not really sure what my topic is going to be for Tuesday night yet, but is there anything else you want people to know about the Till case that we haven't talked about that you think is uber important?
Well, just that, even though that nobody was ever convicted, Milam and Bryant weren't the only 2 who were involved. They were the only 2 who admitted to being involved, because anybody else that was involved could have still been tried. And so their story in Look magazine, I mean, it showed their involvement, but it wasn't factual, because they left out, 5 or 6 other people who were involved. But none of those people ever paid a price. And as tragic as that is, the consolation for that whole thing is that the fact that nobody was ever, there's never been justice. As much as we want justice, and that would have been preferable to none, but since we can't get it, the fact that there was no justice is what gives the Till case its power. It keeps us angry, and we've passed an anti-lynching bill. The Emmett Till cold case bill act was passed twice, once without a sunset provision. And so a lot of good has come of it. He didn't die in vain. It's been the spark not only for the civil rights movement, but to legislation in the decades since. People still get angered when they see his batteries in the same way they did when they walked past that casket. That hasn't
Right.
diminished in time at all. And so the power of the Till case is real, and it'll stay that way. And I think we can find some peace that it's powerful because there was no justice. Again, I would have rather had justice, but we have
Right.
to live with the fact that there was none, and so find some good from that, and it pushes us to move to this day. So,
Well, yeah, I know, and I know that when we've seen on Facebook and such, when certain things come out, there's some vehement people out there that are all, yeah, go after Carolyn Bryant, she's still alive, blah 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 blah, and you've tamped that down. Just they say, well, she lied on the stand. Well, perjury, the statute of limitations, you can't prosecute her for that anyway. So, but So I just wanted to thank you personally, um, for enlightening me on the details of Emmett's case and everything that happened. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I've read it once. I've listened to it once when I was driving back and forth, um, and such. So, I just cannot thank you enough. I am really enthusiastic about the Clyde Kennard book.
Oh, well, thanks so much. And if any of your listeners have further questions or additional questions for me, you can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Devery Anderson on there, and I'll add you, and you can instant PM me some questions about the case if you have further questions, or Clyde Kennard too. I'm happy to talk about that. So if you want, add me, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. I'm on all three, and happy to answer your questions and be friends with you. So
Okay, and I've put up a link to your website that people will be able to see. It's deveryanderson.com, and they can do a lot of different stuff there. You've got different things on there as far as the Till book itself, and the research, and who's who is in the Emmett Till matter. So
and
uh,
it's
go ahead.
still a work in progress. I have a lot to do. I have to add all my Kennard stuff, so it's by no means done. But you can see a few things on there and reach out to me there as well. So
All right, fabulous. Good night, Devery. I will talk with you soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
you too. Thanks a lot, Jim, for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So that's it. Very interesting, gentlemen. I was stunned uh, at how much the work that he put in. It's just an unbelievable amount of work. When I first saw the book, I was like, "Well, my goodness, what do I do? Right? But how am I going to read such a book?" But I couldn't put it down. So, um, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I'll be back on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be. I've got a few things in the works, but I will be posting it both on Facebook and YouTube so that you can tune in and find out what's what. Um, Other than that, we will see you on the next one. If you have not, I take that back. Not see you on the next one. If you have not, you can like this, subscribe, hit the notification button. I've got other videos that's going to be dealing with relationship stuff and how to talk to your significant other, um, how to be a better co-parent, all of the things that I learned from being a family law lawyer and a married man for 3 decades and the father of an adult daughter. I'm hoping Tuesday, but maybe Friday. I know Thanksgiving's coming up, but I'm probably going to be doing a live stream I'm going to tell you what's upcoming, what I have in the works. One is I'm going to be having Aloe Black on, and he is a international recording artist that sung that song "Wake Me Up." Not "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go." That's Wham and George Michael. Um, but he sung "The Man" and "Love Is the Answer," and just an unbelievable artist. I've known him since he was a very young man of 12 or 13. Uh, he is really what they call a superstar. But all of his music is really passionate, and I love it. I'm going to be having him. I'm going to be having the mother of a daughter who was sexually abused, and such, and she's going to come on as a Jane Doe so we can protect everybody's interest. And she's going to come on and talk about the red flags and such she saw that she sort of discounted, and the effects that it had on her daughter. And I'm also going to be having an interview with a young woman who's going to talk to us about what it's like to be a Division I athlete, in balancing academics and athletics and all of that. So those are just the things I've got coming up in the works. So other than that, I guess I will see you on the next one. Okay. Thank you.